Welcome everybody back to House General and Housing. It is still Wednesday, April 23rd, and we are continuing with our testimony on S-125. What we're going to do is hear from Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of the Department of Building and General Services. Wanda, did you say Emily isn't going to testify? You're covering it.
Yes.
Okay, and then what we're going to do is do that and then break for lunch on the floor. And then we're going to have David Mickenberg in the right after the floor. So when the floor is over, we don't believe it will take that long. David will be back and we're going to have Wanda Manoli. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. David will be back and we will, David Mickenberg, and we'll also have Kelly Price from Vermont Warden Services testifying.
And we'll also have committee discussion.
And committee discussion.
And Sophie will hopefully be.
And Sophie, our counsel will be with us for that. So, Wanda, you want to introduce yourself and take it away?
Absolutely. So Chair Mahali and members of the committee, thank you for allowing BGS to come in and talk about the proposed language. I'm Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. I have a long career with the state of Vermont, which I'm very proud of, and we won't go over that. But I did have a great opportunity for almost 20 years working at Buildings and General Services, first as the principal assistant who guided the policy in the Capitol bill, and then I moved to deputy commissioner. And then I left in 2016 and went to the Department of Motor Vehicle, served as deputy commissioner there and then commissioner. And then in October, I returned to BGS. So it's been very exciting and it's a great group of people. And it's been so far, I'm still smiling. So that's really important. S-125. I'll let the committee know that when it was first being proposed and discussed in the Senate, it didn't have a bill number. It was still in working draft. I did go in and testify. And in summary, I had a lot of concerns about the bill as it was drafted and as it was proposed with the functionality of Buildings and General Services and with the contractors in the state of Vermont. Since that time, I had not gone back. And so I actually have just recently seen the amendment to S-125 that passed. And so that is what I'm going to discuss with the committee, if I can. I think it's really important. That, first of all, I would say to the committee, you need to look at Title 29, 161 in its totality. And this is because the bill that you have in front of you is amending is amending this section by adding a new section. So in the current statute, in that title, first of all, there's subsection 3 that says all bids on state projects shall be required to comply with applicable provisions of Title 21. That is labor. Title 21 is labor law. And then Section 3B talks about, and this was spoken about earlier, and I won't read it, but it talks about contracts awarded under Title 29, 161. Specifically, this is cost exceeding $100,000 and cost exceeding $200,000 that is authorized at 50% funded by the Capital Construction Act. So this language that we're talking about goes back to the Capitol bill. And you need to make that, I would ask that you make that connection. Because when you go to the Capitol bill and you look at all of the sections, which you've approved the House version, there are multiple sections. Money is not only given to BGS, it's given to the Agency of Natural Resources, it's given to Vermont State Colleges. It is given to the Vermont Veterans Home. There are funds appropriated to judiciary. That this section B has to be referred to. And those entities have to comply with the public bidding law that's outlined in 161. So you're not just looking at, so A&R, and let me stop because I'm getting ahead in my brain here. There is an exception in this statute that exempts AOT and Forest Parks and Recreations. And the reason that it exempts that is because I think you've heard all of this testimony on the Davis-Bacon Act. And then Forest Parks and Recreation does small major maintenance projects, and they use entities to help them come in and build and do some of the trails. So that was sort of the history around why that was exempted. This bill was amended actually when I was at BGS in my previous capacity, because it goes to the discussion that the commissioner from labor was having with you on prevailing wage. So it's really about prevailing wage. You have Davis-Bacon, and this is prevailing wage and those elements. So to me, I feel I have to give you that history. So I'm here as commissioner talking about overseeing the bidding process and the compliance with that. And so when you start to look at the language, it's not just BGS that would be collecting. When you go to the new proposed language in 5B, it would not be just BGS collecting the records described in subdivision 1 submitted weekly. It would be all of the entities that meet that criteria that are funded through the capital bill or cash that is outlined in the capital bill. So I'm just asking as a committee, if you're considering this, you need to look at everyone that could be impacted by this.
That's a good question.
I'm here for you.
I'm a little confused. So you're saying that currently statute says anything that's 50% or funded 50% by the capital bill.
It's so if you read section B, I don't want to read it to you, but I feel like I have to refer it because I don't have it memorized. So it says contracts awarded for any state project with construction costs exceeding 100,000, a construction project with construction costs exceeding 200,000, and that is authorized and at least 50% funded by the Capital Construction Act, or the 50% by the cash fund for capital and essential investments, shall provide that all construction employees working on the project shall be paid not less than the mean prevailing wage published by the Department of Labor.
Perfect. Nope, that's what I needed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, just to make sure that I'm not following you, so this funds for the capital bill go to rebuild the history museum next door, who knows, just hypothetically. That the prevailing wage, the payor reporting, that applies to that project. If the state in their general budget gives $15 million to an agency to help fund affordable housing, that's different. That does not come under this.
It depends on the funding source. So this is referencing the bonded funds, and there's also statutes. So if you looked at the capital bill, if you remember testimony, maybe from your partners in the House, they talked about the cash fund. So there's currently statute that allows up to a certain percentage of cash to be transferred to the capital bill to accomplish all of the projects. So that's what it's referencing.
Okay.
So what you're saying, if I understand it, just to piggyback on this, is that because this amends 29 VSA section 161, because it amends that section applies to recipient agencies who are receiving their funds from the capital bill or from the cash fund and nothing else. So
So I'm going to speak to the nothing else. I'm going to sit here and be the commissioner on this. I don't, if they are bidding in accordance with 161, let's not talk about what, and they're using that method, then that section of law will apply.
Some other section of the code could well would require bidding. And it would reference,
It could.
it would reference 161
Yeah.
because 161 is the locus of where bidding is described in state law.
And it's a requirement of state construction projects.
Yeah,
That's correct. Set aside Davis-Bacon or set aside other people that are exempt from it. So I'm looking, my comments to you, I'm starting with the current statute and looking where the amendment is coming from and just making some general comments. And the point that I want to make is that I think there's been maybe a perception that this is just about BGS projects. And it is bigger because if there's a construction, if you approve a $5 million construction project and it's not federally funded for the veterans home, it would have to comply with this. And sometimes the money is appropriated directly to them, to, for example, the veterans home, just using this as an example. They would go through the public bid process with us, but they would manage the project. And that's where this new section would come into them as well in collecting this information. May I continue?
please.
So going to the language that is in section 5B of 161, the new subsection. I'm going to just say, and generally to the members of this committee, I think there have been some great comments and concerns raised to you from the commissioner. My job is to work in partnership for the projects that I oversee with industry, to be cognizant of what they're going through, to work with them, because we want to encourage Vermont businesses to do business with us. We want to be able to represent small construction companies, large construction companies, and that's how I look at us as partners. This bill, I know they've testified, but I would agree with the testimony that the impact on these businesses, especially the small, is going to be burdensome. I believe other people have used that. I also believe there's an outcome of the language. If we require additional work on their side, then that's going to reflect in the bids, and that's going to increase the cost of a construction project. And that's the world of business. Some of you may be business owners, and that's just a logical form, that we go through. We are having difficulties now getting bids. And it's not, and I've been working closely with the industry, trying to understand, is it our process? What are they burdened with? And it's really about workforce, and it's about their capacity, and it's about getting individuals, so when they start looking at what their work for the year is, starting in January, how many staff do they keep on? How many staff do they lay up? What are they going to bid on? How is that going to flow? What can they manage? And so we're seeing that's part of it, because we are not fully staffed right now at BGS in our project management. And my department has been impacted by the flooding and by COVID. And so our staff have been focused on the construction side of FEMA, and some of our projects are a little delayed. So that impacts industry as well. So I just want to share with you, I think as you think of it, you've got to, again, look at this holistically. You can't just look at the BGS piece. When I go to the language, I'm just going to summarize. I'm going to go to section 2. You're asking that the records described in subsection 1 shall be submitted weekly. So you are asking, or this language is asking, that employers and contractors submit their payroll weekly to the entity that has this construction project by US mail or email to the state agency overseeing the construction project. Then this language is suggesting or proposing that those records be accompanied by a signed statement from the employer or the subcontractor verifying the accuracy of these records. And then section 3 says that each employer and subcontractor shall preserve the records described in the subdivision 1 for 3 years from the date of completion of the state construction project. And the records shall be available for inspection by the Commissioner of Labor. So I just mapped this out in my mind. Anybody who gets money in this form, they're going to send these documents weekly by mail or by email. I'm very sensitive because of my role at DNV on protecting private information. And so I'm going to be the recipient of something in mail. I can't guarantee the security of that or the safety of that. And I know my email on the state is protected, but not sure where it's coming from. And then I'm going to keep this in the event labor wants to review it, but you're also asking the businesses to keep this. So I just pose to you, is this redundancy? I'm a little passionate about it because my concern is what is the intent of what we're trying to do? And I understand the broader discussions on this. But collecting information and preserving it, because we are the state, now that information is can be accessed through public records request. And so then you have to look at Title I, subsection 317, which starts to outline what can we share, what can we not share. I'm sitting here imagining a $30 million construction project with all of these records, and I get a public record request. I'm going to have to go through every single paper file and redact. So I think, again, ensuring that employees are being paid correctly and are in compliance with what you're trying to do, I understand that. Creating a system that does not, for us, align practically. I'm just saying to this, when I start flowing this whole thing out, it does not make sense. And I'm not sitting here saying the sky is falling. I'm asking you as a committee, as you take consideration of this bill, that you really look at it and you look at it from the state side and implementing it, and you look at it from the business side. The other piece that I just want to point out in subsection F, because I literally have just read this recently. F says the classification of an employee, semicolon, the licensed trades shall supply proof of classification of journey workers and indentured apprentices. So is that in addition to the employers and the subcontractors? And does that have to be done weekly? Because it's just not clear to me. So I point that out. I think currently the data is available. The information is available. And, if there's a specific goal that you really want to accomplish, because what we're doing is this is creating multiple records. And I have opposed, and I will tell this committee now, that the Department of Buildings and General Services or these other entities have to become certified in maintain. There was at one time it talked about us certifying the wages. Absolutely have opposed that. And this is the reason why. And it comes to staffing. If you want to add a new level of regulation on projects, then you have to look at the balance, which is staffing. My project managers may have 20 projects assigned to them, depending on what their level of experience is, depending on what projects that they're doing, but they can be up to 20 projects. And if you start to consider that they're going to now certify this, that's 20 projects, weekly certification. They're going to be spending 30 to 40% of their time going through a certification, which means they are not going to be spending 30 to 40% of the time on the job site and managing the project as intended. So if you are looking at certification, you need to start looking at appropriate staffing. On the Davis-Bacon side and the Agency of Transportation, they have that. You heard today, the one company that testified, they have one account person that's what they do all summer. They can't do anything else. And there's a team at the Agency of Transportation that does this. We're not set up for that. We're not set up for success. And if this is something that you truly want, you need to set us up for success. And that was my passionate comments, and I will stop. So thank you for hearing me.
I'm getting away if you have questions. Go ahead.
Just to have a informed decision from somebody who's got that experience, because you've been with AOT before. What do you have any sense, given like the numbers that we heard from Department of Labor, or just your sense of the numbers of contractors? Like what would it take? Like how many FTEs or whatever would we be talking, and networking or software upgrades or?
So I don't know if there's a system. I mean, first of all, I think we've worked together in the past on the IT system for DMV, so we know what goes behind that. I don't know if it's, I mean, you're asking a business to do a weekly filing. They may do bi-weekly payrolls. I don't know what I think you really, understanding from industry how this impacts them, that is important. The way I'm reading the proposed language, and it's my interpretation, I could be incorrect. It's not just BGS and staffing. If you look at the capital bill and you look at the section under A&R, for example, because I think they got possibly like 30 million this year. I don't know how much of that are construction projects, how much of it are grants, but how are they going to do it? How's judiciary going to do it? How are these entities going? Because the way I'm reading it and making that connection, it's not just us. So for me, I can look at my staff, and I know I easily, at a minimum, could say I would need 4 additional people if they're coming in weekly. And then I need to know how to protect that information and how I address public record requests, because this language creates that immediately once we collect it, and it becomes a part of our file, either by mail or by email. We have to comply with the public records. And we have to comply with the Secretary of State and how we retain those public records. This says 3 years, but it's a much larger, there are certain things that we have to do and how long we have to keep them. You say 3 years, but how do we store them? Their preference is electronic if you talk to them. So I'm really so I don't know the full impact. If the documents are required and available for labor to review, I'm not sure why you would be asking businesses to submit them weekly.
There's a couple of questions for you. Well, one very simple one is, does BGS, because of all the flooding we had and ARPA and everything, do you deal with are a lot of the projects that you're currently undertaking in response to the flood and otherwise have federal money and get covered by Davis-Bacon? So
we have not started any projects yet, sir. We are still in the process of our application and filings with FEMA. There are specific documents that we have to maintain, and because we can be audited, I'm not sure where the payroll on that would fit into. But wouldn't you be in the same position of AOT? Essentially, you're going to have to do Davis-Bacon and file all these things just because of the federal money? I think I will confirm that for you. I know that it was, I can't remember the details when we rebuilt Waterbury, but it's a combination of federal, state, and insurance. We have very tight restrictions on the process and how we go about it. I haven't gotten to the construction side. Let's say, again, forgetting about Davis-Bacon and the federal side,
So what's unclear to me is this. If a major concern behind all of this is to make sure that people are paid prevailing wage, I couldn't tell, did I understand you to be saying
The
that,
Department of Labor does it now.
that under this, under three VSA 941, anyway, which refers to Labor Act and bidding, that would be required as it stands
Yeah.
now?
And we also have language that I did not bring with me that requires prevailing wage on state construction projects. So there is that general on these projects, and I apologize that I don't have that section with me. But we worked several years ago with setting prevailing wages. So that is where the language in currently in Title 29, 161, 3B came from. It was connecting it to prevailing wage. It was actually Commissioner Noonan and Commissioner Michael Bahowski, where we came together and aligned this to make sure, at least on these projects, they were getting prevailing wage and set some standards. So if you go to the Department of Labor's homepage, or you go to our contract documents, we specifically say that you need to pay that.
Well, I'm assuming, without knowing for sure, but I'm assuming that one of the major impetuses for this part of the bill was enforcing the prevailing wage provision. So I guess my question would be, if you are required to pay prevailing wage on state contracts or ensure that
Yep.
it's paid, how do you enforce that?
So it's in the contract. Now, I did not bring the contract with me, but there is a section in our contract that refers to that. And of course, I did not grab that. And I can get that back to you if you would like. Okay.
It's in the contract.
Yep.
Is there anybody in your agency that determines whether the contract is being followed?
So it's certification, and it's certification by the industry that they're going to pay this. There is, I don't want to, I want to speak correctly about the process, and I don't, and so I want to, because I'm sort of going through memory, I'll be happy to get that back to you, but there is specific guidance and there's specific documents on how the prevailing wage is set based on where you are in the state. So I can give one packet.
But, so what you seem to be saying is that there is some, okay, it's contractually obligated, and there is some sort of self-certification process that these
Well, when you're,
contractors go through.
when you sign the contract, you're agreeing to the contract, and you're agreeing to be obligated to that. So I'm again giving I don't know this, I'm not aware of when this has occurred, because I've only been there since October, that when you, if there's a complaint, then labor will come in
So if
and look at it.
some employee says, oh, I wasn't paid prevailing wage.
Right.
Their complaint would go to the Department of Labor, which would reference your contract, but the
Yep.
Department of Labor would be charged with in the enforcement issue.
Correct. And I believe the way that this document, the new language is back to, you're putting that back to the Department of Labor can investigate the files at any time. It's just, which file do they investigate? The one that was filed with the, do they go to the business, or, you know, I mean, that's where I feel like we're creating.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's a lot for the businesses, so.
Great. Any further questions? At all? Well, thank you, Wanda, so
Thank
much
you, Chair.
for your testimony and your service.
Thank you. And I will get you a quick summary if you'd like. Will that be helpful
I
on the
would,
contract?
I think I'm most interested in, not so much in the contractual terms, but in the enforcement. Since that's what I think this is about, really. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
So we will reconvene, so let's say 10 minutes after the 4. Whenever it is, we reconvene. And we have, at that point, David Mickenberg and Kelly Price. David, you'll have to watch when we get out.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.